Jim Martz, who passed away December 30th, 2023, was one of my lifetime closest friends in sports media. He was an inspiration for my tennis media career. For decades, Jim and I covered many of the tournaments together, including the U.S. Open, the Miami Open, the Delray Beach Open, the Orange Bowl, the Junior Orange Bowl, the Eddie Herr Internationals, and the Little Mo Internationals. Tennis fans, welcome back to Inside Tennis with the Koz. Jim Martz and I have worked together and known one another for decades. Jim Martz has helped me with the Fox Sunshine Network profile of Chris Evert and the 50th anniversary of the USTA Florida production and the International Tennis Hall of Fame Gardner Malloy 100th birthday production and countless ongoing media projects. Jim Martz, before we start talking journalism and tennis, let's find out some cool stuff in your life too. Born in South Bend, part of you-know-what, Notre Dame territory. What was that like? What indelible mark has that left on you?
Well, I was very fortunate to be born practically in the shadow of the Golden Dome at Notre Dame and growing up there. That's why I became a fanatic about college football and college basketball. And I can remember being a kid, the tickets were only $5 in those days. Now, that doesn't sound like much, but it was a lot of money. We couldn't get season tickets, but my dad was in business in town, knew a lot of people, and it seemed like every Saturday morning when there was a home game, I'd be out raking in the yard, and somebody would drive up with 2 tickets, and we'd jump in the car and off we go to a Notre Dame game, sometimes maybe shoveling off 2 feet of snow to be able to sit down.
Iowa was the next stop. The University of Iowa. You got your MA in journalism. All of a sudden, you're at Field of Dreams, and it's never left you, has it, Jim Martz?
No, the Field of Dreams in up near Dubuque, Iowa, which they made the book and the movie and everything about. It's a real deal. I really recommend that everybody, if they get a chance, to go there. It's a very special place, and there really is a ball diamond that you can walk onto and play for free, which I did years ago with one of my little brothers. I was in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, had several little brothers. One came with me, he was a baseball player. And I get the camera out, he's up to bat. I get bat on ball when he hits a home run into the cornfield.
Goodness gracious, did the ghost come out?
No, we couldn't find any. We both walked in there looking for the baseball and the ghost, and didn't find either.
It all started down right here, Southeast Florida, the Miami Herald. Big-time paper, big-time sports writer coming in. You didn't start with tennis, though. How did you get into the game of tennis, covering it?
I fell into the tennis beat over about 4 decades ago when there was an opening in the Miami Herald in the main office. I'd worked in the West Palm Beach Bureau and in the Fort Lauderdale Bureau. And then Bill Sheldon, who'd been covering tennis and soccer and Florida State football, left to go to work for the Miami Toro soccer team. The Herald's executive sports editor said, "Jim, we want you to take his beats." And I thought, tennis? I didn't know anything. I didn't know a baseball from a tennis ball hardly. And so I sort of fell into it. But at the time, I was also living near where Chris Evert grew up at Holiday Park. And so I figured I better learn something about this sport, and took 3 lessons from her dad, Jimmy Evert. Never forget them, great lessons. He only charged $5. That's how I fell.
The good old days there, Jim.
Yes, it was. But that's how I fell into the sport. And then you just become immersed in it. And I was very lucky to be at the time when the tennis boom was really taking off.
Silver anniversary right down the road, 25 years with Florida tennis. How did you get into this publication, and what are you most eager to share with the readers?
Well, I was at the Miami Herald 21 years and decided I'd like some new challenges, took a leap of faith, and started this magazine from scratch. And we're still here doing it 25 years later. And it's been very rewarding because tennis is one of the key hotbeds in Florida and California. So I've had a chance to see a lot of great players over the years growing up, and a lot of great tournaments over the years as well.
How strong is the USTA section of Florida, the state of Florida, for a tennis journalist?
Oh, it's excellent. First of all, the USTA Florida here is the best section in the nation, but it's the great place with all the great tournaments here. The one that Butch Buchholz started that has some history right here at Boca West, that's now the Miami Open, has had several different names. It's one of the top 5 tournaments in the world. And so I've had a chance to cover all those players the last 25 years and get to write about, especially the ones who live here in Florida. And there are probably more players on the tour who at least have part-time or full-time homes in Florida than any other state.
Let's talk about those most interesting players. You covered them all, the who's who of tennis beyond Florida. Who were some of the most intriguing people that you've covered?
I would start with Chris Evert, going all the way back to probably around 1973, 74, when she's at the height of her career. And, she was sort of known as like a metronome on the court. Everything would be, very smooth and maybe sort of boring and all that, but she hardly would ever lose. Off the court, very down to earth, very different person. Loved to joke and tell jokes, maybe even something you might not be able to put on the air. But she was a great person, and she was very helpful to me with Florida tennis. When I gave her the news that I was going to start the magazine, she says, "Jim, what can I do to help you?" And before I could say, "Oh, you could give me $100,000, she said, "How about if I write columns for you?" And she did for many, many years.
Wow. Well, you've been around the best journalist in the game. Whom have you admired most through the years?
Bud Collins, without a doubt. He's clearly the premier tennis journalist, not only for America, but for the whole world over and over. And his encyclopedias, I highly recommend that people who really want to know the history of tennis, that they pick up one of his tennis encyclopedias that he's written. And he was helpful to me also over the years, and volunteered to write some columns for me at the beginning also, helped me get off the ground.
You just published 2 books, Macy Magic and Safe Tennis. Let's start with Macy first. What makes Rick Macy so successful?
He started from the Midwest just like I did and sort of fell in to tennis because he'd played all the typical sports, baseball, football, basketball, but went the tennis direction. He's one of the premier teaching pros in the world, and his record proves that. He coached 5 players in their formative years who became #1 in the world: Jennifer Capriati, Andy Roddick, Venus and Serena Williams, and he had a year with Maria Sharapova. And we have chapters about each of them in the book and some other interesting players that he'd worked with over the years, including one who was a singer, dancer, and player named Monique Veely. And guess who her agent was? Donald Trump.
Beautiful. Success story there, perhaps, Jim.
Well, her father was the person who was really leading her along the way. He unfortunately died very young, and her career went in a different direction, and she didn't stay into tennis. But it made for a good chapter in the book.
Safe Tennis. What is most gratifying for you in that publication? What are you eager to pass on to the readers there?
Well, to tell them the importance about how to avoid injuries, and if you get injured, what to do when you get injured. I've interviewed top people in the business in terms of fitness, exercise, and the mental part of the game. And the most important thing is preparation. I keep hearing that over and over, especially the weekend hackers. Don't just walk out onto the court and start playing. You've got to do that warm-up and preparation, and we go into great detail with photos and everything in the book.
Jim, as a tennis journalist, what has been the most challenging crusade for promoting the game that you've been involved with?
Well, right now I would say the Miami Open and keeping it going and keeping it in Miami. Its future is actually, unfortunately, in question, and it's not the fault of the tournament. The tournament is held on public courts in a 600-acre park. That's a park that's as big as Central Park in New York. It's been going since 1985, and since '87 it's been down at Key Biscayne, this beautiful island off of the shore of downtown Miami. But they want to upgrade the facilities and keep up with other tournaments around the world that draw all the top players in the world, and they're getting behind on that. Now, some people will say to me, a tennis court's a tennis court. Why do the players have to have all these other amenities? It's not just the players, it's also the fans to have first-class facilities. It's being tied up in court by the person whose family donated the land to the county years and years ago. They want it to be a passive park. That's the hang-up in getting this done.
Cover story for Florida Tennis. What's out there this month?
This month we have Ivo Karlovic on the cover. He's the ace king. He's hit more aces than any other player in history.
Was it 10,000 or 100,000?
10,000, I believe. He's 6'11", and he uses that height to great success in hitting more aces than anybody else has. He has a home here in South Florida in Plantation. He's defending champion at the Delray Beach Open, and a really nice guy.
Nice guy indeed. Talk about a nice journalist guy. Jim Martz, always great to spend some time with you.
Thank you.
And you are one of my inspirations. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Koz. I really appreciate it, and we enjoy running your interviews in Florida Tennis Magazine, each issue.
Jim, you will be missed forever, but never forgotten. We love you, boy.